Okay, so I started making a video just now. I'm gonna start over because I realize what I want to do with these videos is just say what the video is about. I feel like you should at least get to know that. But today, I kind of want to talk about cycles or paradigm shifts or, giving up old patterns is really just what it is. And so today, giving up old patterns of what we once thought or what we once believed is a big part of the human condition, is understanding these, like they call in spiritual texts, like a karmic cycle. And for me, these karmic cycles have they really just are as simple as realizing you have a pattern that you'd prefer to live without or to change, and then going about it in some way so that you can start to move into a new pattern. They call that, like, in certain circles, the quantum shift or quantum leap or sidestepping karmic residue. But ultimately what it is just realizing that you're doing something that's unsavory. And I think for me, that process has been something that I am trying to fine tune, not necessarily what the things are, because I just know that they're going to come up in my life, but how I relate to myself while I'm doing those, making those changes. And I'm sure this is going to be a subject that I touch on in the future here, but it's also, I feel like talking about it today just because I particularly feel extra raw today. And it's funny, I used the word raw in previous videos, but today I feel extra raw because, I mean, honestly, it's just, this is kind of like the process. And I'll maybe share a couple stories that I feel like I want to just share. That'll help me elaborate on what I'm talking about. One of those stories is from me playing baseball. And this might not seem like it's the same subject we're talking about, so just stick with me while we're kind of going through it, and I'll show you what I mean. But when I was in New York, it was right when I got there. I played baseball for New York University. And within like the first 6 games of the season, I tore my ACL. It was right when I got out there as a young freshman. I was starting at shortstop, and then also pitching. And I really wanted to have, obviously just like most people, they just want to have a good season and a healthy season. And I got out there and I was really disappointed that I had blown out my ACL. And a few weeks passed. I had the surgery. I was starting to get into rehab, and my physical therapist, who was sort of like a physical therapist, sort of like a trainer, they had like a bunch of those hybrid positions at NYU. And so one of the ones that worked closest with me was mentioning to me, he said, prior to your injury, I noticed that you were a very quad dominant runner. And he's like, what that means is that you predominantly use your quadriceps, your muscle to run. And sometimes that can create overloading of the tension on top of that patellar tendon or on top of the knee joint in general. And so when you make a cut or make a move that your knee isn't very, it's too much onto that one side, you can it's basically just off balance, really. And you can just pull out your tendon and tear it that way. And so one of the things he said is that what we're going to try to do is try to get your hamstrings and your glutes stronger so that they can withhold this load that you're running with. And I wasn't a small guy. I was, fluctuated weight, but anyway, not important. But then I was asking more and more questions about my previous, weightlifting strategies and ideas and what I had thought, what my beliefs were within the gym. And I think at that time, I really thought, okay, I'm I'm just gonna move as much weight as possible in the gym. And prior to my injury, what I was doing is I would just get in there, do a ton of squats, do a ton of lunges, ton of this stuff. And what my trainer told me was that he said, all of these movements that you're doing, the ones that you work on the most, the ones that, you know, you're obsessed with or trying to get better with, are the ones that are also creating more of this quad dominance, this quadricep dominance. And so I had a big pause while I was talking to him, because I realized, oh, so what you're saying is, and he didn't tell me this explicitly, I'm sure, because I don't think any trainer would really go out of their way to for sure tell you this, but what I realized in my mind was that my training behaviors and my beliefs about how I wanted to train and how I was being in the gym were created more of this quad dominance, and therefore may have created more instability and more probabilities for me to tear my ACL. So it's like, that's a lot to take in for someone who was passionately training to be a better baseball player or a better athlete. And then realizing, oh, the training that I was doing was increasing my chances to have the injury, and I did have the injury. That's a tough pill to swallow. And it was a very tough pill to swallow for me. I'm sitting there. I remember exactly where I was when I heard it. I was laying down, stretching out. I was doing some rehab stuff and slowly getting back into the game and doing some things on the turf in an indoor gym. I remember it like it was yesterday, but that realization of, oh, I have been doing this to myself, and there's a good chance that I was hurting myself in this process of doing these specific workouts that I thought my beliefs were that they were helping me. And I'm going to kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier, is that I realized that, and I'm realizing this now. Well, I'm not realizing this now, but I can see a parallel there for a lot of the things in my life where it's very difficult to accept something like that, where your patterns are patterns and you're in a paradigm, right? Everyone's in their own paradigm or in their own matrix or whatever you want to call that. And then as you're surfacing some of these negative beliefs or negative thought patterns or whatever, it's creating more negativity in your life. And then what you have to do is you have to at some point say, I don't know what's going on here. I'm in pain. I don't want this to keep happening. Or you insult someone that you love, or you offend somebody unnecessarily, and you realize, oh, it's because of this belief pattern that I have and have had. And now I can take the opportunity to acknowledge what has happened in the past as fact, or as reality, or as just acceptance in general. And, all of those things can kind of be debated on, how real things are, because it's all perceptive, right? It's all perspective basis. It's all perspective basis. But like for me, I had also had some knee pain prior to going to tear my ACL. And that a lot of that knee pain could have been dealt with if I had changed up my workout routine, but I didn't know any better. And that's also something I would like to kind of mention too. There's an element of forgiveness in there, self-forgiveness and self-compassion, where if we can, and again, most of what I'm going to be talking about, hopefully on the channel, doesn't seem like I'm preaching, but because this is meant to be like more of a thought-provoking conversation where maybe you, and I do this, I try to think about this occasionally, if not quite a bit of the time. It's one of the reasons why I meditate. But it's like, okay, what things in my life are causing me more unnecessary energy towards? What are causing me pain? What things am I just suffering from that I'm unwilling to see the result of? And for instance, for example, what I could have done was just say, hey, to my trainer, he'd be like, some of this is because you're a quad dominant runner and these exercises you've been doing are actually making you a more quad dominant runner. And I could have had the option to say, screw you, you don't know what you're talking about. I am becoming a better athlete like this, and continue down that belief path that may have caused more issues down the road for me. But instead, looking back, I am really proud of myself that I actually did accept that, even though it took a lot of pain. Because what happens is, in our timeline, in my belief, is that when we're looking back through those specific instances, like for me, I was looking back on those specific instances prior to that injury as moments where I have to accept every single moment. Oh my gosh, that workout was one of the workouts that led to this injury. One of those, that pain was a result of previous workouts and things like that. And you have to accept all of those in your timeline to start to fully heal and to fully change, to make the paradigm shift or the adjustment there. And I think that's very challenging and difficult. And it's honestly one of the reasons why I'm talking about it today, is just because, I think they're becoming more quickly lately than they have in the past. And so today I woke up feeling very vulnerable and like raw because of it. One of the, I think, like this all sounds fine and dandy, and that like, now I'm working out my glutes and my hamstrings. And so I'm probably, the chances of me, having an injury based off of the same, issues is really low, but which is all great. And that's like ideal, right? But when we realize that there are these changes that need to be made or that can be made, we have the opportunity to make them. Once we start to make them, there's also something funny that happens that I've observed, is that you start to look at things differently. You start to, see things in your life differently. One of those things is that, after that, I started to see the repercussions of my workouts. Like, what workouts are actually helping me towards staying healthy? Which ones are gonna be just for strength? Like, which ones have kind of both in their mix? And so that paradigm shift of realizing, oh, my injuries have caused, some pain for me. It also creates more thought in your brain about, hey, what actually am I doing? And that to me is awareness. The more you go, oh, okay, I had that injury. How is this next workout going to affect me? That process there is one of these that, you keep massaging into your consciousness. And I think today, after making the effort of letting go of some old behaviors, let's just say yesterday, I think in meditation, I just realized that I do very much have these patterns that I would rather be without. So not only was it kind of painful to acknowledge, it's waking up this morning and having to feel just slightly kind of different. You're like kind of moving into, a new paradigm, a new life. And I think when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at change. So like for me right now, I'm looking at my couch. And so if I move over to this way, then the thing I'm looking at is changing. The thing didn't actually change. The object didn't actually change, but now because I'm, tilting my perspective slightly, I'm actually seeing a different view of what the couch is. And I think that's what happens when we make these paradigm shifts, is that not necessarily has nature made these major changes, but because we've tilted our head just slightly, we can see something slightly different. And I think that can cause anxiety too. And that's why I woke up this morning, I think a little bit on the more vulnerable side, is because I'm also kind of like uncomfortable seeing a lot of things in myself and around me that just seem different. And I think That's just part of this process of being human. It's just part of the process of kind of, and again, this is all, gonna change, I'm sure. Even the way that I'm speaking to the camera about this specific topic, I'm sure down the road is gonna change. And that is because my paradigm, I'm expecting to change. And that's what's been kind of interesting about these videos in particular, is that like, I know what I'm saying to the camera will be different in a few months, because what I'm saying even in this video is that I will be changing, and therefore I will have a different perspective on things, and therefore my thoughts on certain, subjects will be different, and therefore, I'm hoping to just see myself more as a human and acknowledge, and make friends with my ego. I'd rather know where it's at and what my shadows are than try to ignore them or try to pretend like I don't have one. And I think that's a big part of this a human experience, again, is realizing these paradigm shifts and kind of hopping out of this karmic cycle of just negative behavior, or destructive behavior, or energy zapping behavior, or whatever you want to call it. So anyway, those are my thoughts for today. Hopefully they're at least thought-provoking for you. I plan to try to make these about me and not about generalities, but it's kind of some of the things that I've noticed in my life. So again, I'm wearing a hat today because I'd rather not have to fiddle around with my hair. So I appreciate you being patient with me. I will continue making the videos because I can tell it's helping my progression as well. So thanks for sticking in there with me. I'll talk to you later.